liked hanging out with, and I liked hanging out with Antonio, so I had him do the part. I think he did a great job. That's an old caboose we found when we were location scouting. We found this caboose in the middle of a field, and we tracked down the owner, and we ended up shooting there in the summer. I wanted it to look more bleak than that beautiful green grass. This is shooting in Antonio's lab. You know, we have a rig shooting, we rigged the camera to shoot straight down so we could do these overhead shots. I have to give a shout out to Ryan Gosling, who loaned me the camera for 2 years. It's his Red, and he never uses it, so I asked him if I could borrow it. And we shot with it for 2 years, which I don't think we could have figured out how to do this otherwise. You know, renting cameras was not an option on this. This is the set, another angle of the set of Antonio's workshop, or Tone's workshop. I found this footage of this guy in the 50s who did all these photographs of vocal cords, these films of vocal cords, which I became completely obsessed with. So we used that in the monitor. That's an old dental X-ray machine that my dentist actually gave that to me. She had it up, and I commented on it, and she asked me if I wanted it because she didn't use it anymore. So it was a pretty beautiful prop. It's inside Pitch's house. A lot of the stuff we did was incredibly simple, you know, like that's the lighting setup for that. It's one light. It's a really simple lighting setup. This is when Tone kind of falls apart a little bit because he realizes he's not going to see Pitch again. This is the set. That's the location. This is my friend Oren Neiman. She's a ballet dancer, and she did the dance sequence for it. That's the set. It's a very small set. Those footlights are really interesting. Those are Jello molds, and they were copper Jello molds that were like $6 a piece, and I sprayed them with satin nickel, and it looks like this kind of like old vaudeville stage lighting. Once again, another miniature kind of surveillance drone is what I like to call that one. The structure is a steel mill in Pittsburgh that I photographed. I don't know if there's any aircraft fans out there, but you might be able to identify what that wing is. One light, though, super simple, tiny little LED. This is kind of cool. The shot of him looking at her, or him looking at himself in the mirror, and then him looking in the mirror and she's in the mirror. So I just built 2 mirrored rooms so that he's looking at her, actually looking at her standing on the other side, but I had him stand very motionless. And we built the reverse room in the other side so it was backwards. So they're just standing opposite one another. This is that aircraft that flies over. Once again, the idea that there's always someone looking at you, always an eye in the sky. And it's really interesting to me, like the amount of work that you put into something like that versus the 8 seconds of screen time. When it's so dark, you can hardly even see it. But that's the only way to make it sell. You know, it doesn't sell otherwise. This is Oren falling onto crash pads, which is amazing. I think we took this 8 or 9 times, and she's kept doing it over and over. So this is the location. It's kind of an ugly location, but by the time we found all these blossoming plants that were blossoming, and it was like cotton balls, and they were everywhere, and the things were flying through the air everywhere. So we started picking them and shaking them just out of frame. So we had these things floating through the frame. And that was one of those things that, yeah, these are all practical. They're all in the shot. All UT students. I loved working with the students. It was amazing. They were so fired up, no pun intended, but this is what happened to all the sets when we were done filming. We burned them all, which was kind of a interesting, cathartic sort of like moment. And these are some of the models, kind of laid them all out and photographed them before putting them into storage or getting rid of them. So anyway, so that's kind of all I was going to show, but I wanted to know if there were any questions at all. If so, anyone? Yep. I haven't put it anywhere yet. You know, I haven't put it out. I mean, I think I was I'm not sure. You know, it's potentially like Vimeo, and just put it out. Or there are a couple like sci-fi streaming channels on YouTube. One of them is Dust. It's called Dust, and they show just sci-fi shorts, all of it, which I might give it to them. I'm not really sure. I kind of just put it away when I was done. And I went right into another film right after I made another film. We were still kind of working on tone, and we started shooting another film. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm guessing that you're hypercritical of everything you do of yourself. Is there anything you would do differently now that you've had time to look at it?
Yeah, with the film? Yeah, so I would do no voiceover, and I would just I watched it with no sound, and you get the story. Yeah. You totally get it.
It was incredibly beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Just absolutely
Thanks.
Breathtaking.
I appreciate it. Anybody else?
When it comes to like post-apocalyptics, mostly a lot of the losses is about like water, plants, or even extinction.
Sure.
So what gave you the idea of its loss of voices?
I kind of like the idea of repression in government, like government primarily trying to repress the populace, which we're seeing now happen everywhere, right? And so the voice thing, and then I got this idea for like the voices, and then all of the people's names were like tone and pitch, like things that related to sound, but mostly just the idea of like oppression in government, silencing the people. And I mean, we live in societies that, to varying degrees, censor and suppress the voice of the people, and that was kind of the idea behind it.
I have another question. I'm seeing a lot of science fiction elements, so correct me if I'm wrong. You've used these ideas from the movies, the introduction of Blade Runner, 2001, Space Odyssey,
Yeah.
Total Recall. Mm-hmm. There's so much more, but these are the favorites.
Not as much Total Recall, but for sure 2001, and Blade Runner, two of my favorite films. 2001 I think probably is my all-time favorite film.
I agree.
And when I was a kid, I didn't understand the film really. And I have my own version of understanding that film. I think Kubrick never really was very vocal about exactly what it was, like the Star Child and the rebirth and all that. But Yeah, there's actually a scene in there that was a total homage to 2001, which is when the spacecraft goes to Earth. We built it backwards, and we did it backwards. So it's where they tilt up to the moon, and in this time we tilt down to the Earth.
You did a great, even with the lightning, you said that was the difficulty of getting just the lightning from the sun.
Yeah.
But you can also get it from the Earth as well.
Exactly. So you noticed that was more
Yes,
filled.
yes.
The shadows were more filled from the Earth. Yeah, exactly. That's very good. Good eye, man. It's impressive. Yeah, very impressive. But yeah, for sure, Blade Runner, and you know, I really like. As a kid, I was really interested in all of the Jerry and Sylvia Anderson films, UFO, Space 1999, like anything that had models in it, I was into because I liked how magical it was. So one of the reasons I went into it was for that reason. You know, it's like you're creating this magic, you know, and one of the sort of tenets of this film was, you know, we all tried to figure out like older ways to solve problems and use miniatures and, you know, in-camera things. And like that shot of Mars when it's spinning, we just downloaded a photo of Mars and printed it and put it on a rotisserie flat and just filmed it, and it looked totally real. Shot it through that window, the dirty window, looked totally real. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, tried to.
Another thing came to mind as well in terms of the aspect ratio, the camera movements, the cinematography. I think that's what they call the style of Wes Anderson. Did you use that as well?
Well, so Wes Anderson, the thing about Wes Anderson, who I love, by the way, is he's co-opted everything from Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd all the way up. So the idea of like shooting down on the boxes and all that stuff is definitely not Wes Anderson. But I feel like when someone takes an idea and they do it over and over and over, it becomes kind of a proprietary idea. So I have seen that many times before Wes Anderson was even born in films. But, you know, Hitchcock used it in 39 Steps, shooting straight down. Like, you know, symmetry, 2001 is all symmetry. I mean, every one of those shots in space is symmetry, you know. And I've always really loved, like, symmetrical films and love his films, Wes Anderson's films as well, by the way. I think the challenge when you're doing a film that's based largely in visuals is to connect sort of the human element to it. You know, if it's like very sterile and very mechanical, you know, it doesn't feel as kind of like heartfelt. So that's always that balance, you know, which I feel like Wes does really well. And I really wanted to do with this. I wanted to tell, at the end of the day, like a simple love story was the goal, like a really simple love story. And then kind of put it in this world. And this is a world that this could have been in New York, you know, or it could have been anywhere, right? It didn't have to be in this world that we created. But, anyway, yep.
Don't worry, we'll catch up soon.
Okay.
I really don't have a question. I just wanted to say that was absolutely breathtaking.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. No question, huh?
Well, I was going to ask a question, but I'm not sure. Okay, I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Any preference between still and shooting movies?
Yeah, I'm a still photographer. I mean, that's my thing. I mean, I have no designs on like any kind of like movie career. I like making short films. I just did one with a friend of mine over the weekend. We worked 2 days on it and cut it to get a 5-minute film. But it's like, I love the idea of like making little vignettes and making little movies and stuff. But personally, I think the thing about film is film creates a memory for you, right? So we go into a theater, we watch the thing, we walk out, and we have a memory. And that's what we live with. We don't live with that film, we live with the memory of the film. And oftentimes we only see it once, and so our memory becomes distorted. And you know, there are films that we love, and film also connects people because you could watch this here in Sharjah, and I could have a screening in Austin, and the people that were at that screening have a common experience with you, right? You both had that same experience. Stills for me, like living with stills and being able to contemplate those moments, I'm much more affected. I love film, but I'm more affected sort of emotionally, I think, by stills. It's hard to, I don't know. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah, I am. I mean, this is a celebration of stills, you know. I walk through the hallways here and I'm been affected the entire time I've been here, so yeah. But I think stills for me I like the best. taken off. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Charles.
Your still images are so striking, and there's sort of a hyper saturation, which is really so distinctive in your style. You have the exact same feeling in the film. This is a technical question, but is there something you do to give that really almost surreal, hyper saturated look to everything? It has deep shadows, and the color is so vibrant.
Yeah, when you're doing, I think the thing when you're shooting color, just in general, I learned this from stills. Like when I was I was a newspaper photographer for 4 years. That's how I started. I was a photojournalist. And about 3 years into it, our paper went to color. And we all hated it. Like everybody in the photo department hated it because you introduce a whole other element, right? I mean, like I love black and white, and I've shot probably 1 million images on black and white. It's so much easier than shooting color. Black and white is just like, it's an equalizer. You know, you shoot it and it's just like, it becomes value and shape, and formally you're concerned with it, but color is very difficult. So I started trying to kind of wrestle with it and make peace with it when I was at the newspaper. And what I discovered is that you have to be in control, completely in control of the color palette. And certain things work and certain things don't. And you learn the things that work, and as you know, and you learn the things that don't work, right? And you know, out of focus backgrounds in black and white look amazing. Color is very difficult because suddenly you have this totally mishmash array of color, and it may not complement the subject. So when I do still portraits or still photography stuff, you know, I try really to control all that. You know, I usually shoot on sets, painted backgrounds. And in this case, you know, we're controlling everything because we're controlling the palette and the sets. So I'll get a ton of paint chips and lay them all out and go like, okay, this wall is going to be this color. Her dress is going to be this color. You know, I designed that heart fabric she was wearing, and we had it printed, and she made the dress out of. One reason I cast her is because she's a really good seamstress, and she made all her own costumes, so which worked really well. Yeah, just controlling the palette is really like the trick, and really just really consciously, sort of being mindful of it. For me, has worked well. You know.
I love the contrast, the saturation.
This was a little more contrasty than I've seen it before with this projection or this screen. A lot of the blacks were blocking up, and my recollection is they weren't as much when I've seen it like projected in theaters. But I thought it looked beautiful. It's such a beautiful screen. Yeah. But yeah, we definitely, when we go into grade everything, you know, I'm really, like, my editors hate me because they always want, well, my 23-year-old UT grad editor, I would drive him nuts because we'd be cutting and he'd go like, and I'd always say, oh, let's color grade this scene. I want to see if it's going to work. You know, he's like, oh my God, I got to take it into Resolve and do all this, you know. So I've gotten pretty good at just not worrying about it. And I think that has to do with experience, you know, knowing the capabilities of the programs. But like, it's the same as, you know, using Lightroom or Photoshop in terms of like grading for the most part. You're dealing with the same elements. Thank you. Anybody else? Time? Okay. Well, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.